dewa shimo jine jimbo jivu duve kalu ju lana meba lana mena je tumba sanje jonde debe jewa shaja tuba la shabe kudu jazu je Tumba jonde de jin sheba raja yanda ba zobe sanye bana jazu dema dewa shimo jine Jewu duwe kala yuwa lana mem ata men ye damba sanye jone beje wa shaja tuba la chabre yazo je wu kaze kanye zo wo je dama ne sa jen de la gomba de ane je de ne na cho je zo de ze je mo je la cha Nanda bo kyo do zu za wa yi shi ja zu se bi lu cha pa ti de su na la me wo kong po ju ni je la cha zi sen jo den pa chi me da we ja sen do cha wa je la cha zi du zhe je na si bo su na ji nya me chi ni je la cha zi Ombo tuje jede mba tamje kempe dembo Sona yede gyaso je deji je la jade Tabe de jade wa gyo gewe nyezo de Chedo de dom che gyu ba shi gyu je la jade Tone trove la ya de la ba da la ra de Shenge da ba ye de de ge de la ya ja de Chi ya me ja je ge wa ku sun so ba ge Ra ge se ne yo du de ne ta ge ten ba ye Ka ma ra re ma me na yu ma se ba chu ge na Me lang lo da te da bu de je che na de da da So na de ye tam je se ba ye bo ba to ne ye ge da de Ka da na da chi we la chu le se be so ro ro ba
To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent, destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When the supreme among human, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like moon, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star or a rise, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by waves of aging, sickness, and death.
Baba Kunjo Solo Cha Zelo Digi Dagi Toba Duji No Chonde De Jebu Ka Chagu Bumbo Rela Gilon Je Gindu Jembo No Janju Zebe Gindu Jembo Tawa Jedo Jode De Se Chonde De Samo Nawa Shijave Choje Nanda Tengen Zela Nyombo Shuzo Yang De Se Janju Zembo Zembo Baba Chere Se Wanju Shera Je Paru Do Chemba Samo Cheba Nila Namba Tashi Pumbo Nga Deda Laya Rashin Je Tomba Namba Tabo Tene Sanje Je Tu Tsedan Demba Shere Nanju Semba Semba Sembo Baba Chere Se Wanju Na Dege Je Meso Riji Ku Kanla La Sherab Je Paru Do Chemba Samo Cheba Cheba Deba Deda laba ja dege je me pa da jan ju semba semba je baba chere se onju je setan demba shere da de bula dege je shere bu reje bom reje bomo gala shere je paru do samu chebo juba deba de de dar number tawa chade pombo nago de daba Dājīn jī tōmbā nāmbā yāng dāmbā jī sū tāwū sū tōmbā wū tōmbā nī sū 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 lē tōmbā nī tōmbā nī lē yāng sū shiān mā yī nū dē shiān dō tsō rā tāng dū shī tāng dū shī nāmbā rā shē bā nā tōmbā wū shā rī bū tē tā wū nū sēm jī tōmbā mī dē cī nī mē bā mā jē bā mā ngā Tima meba, tima dan tewa meba, kawa meba wo, shari bu deda wana tomba nila su me, tsora me, duji me, nambara sheba me, me me, nawa me, lu me, yi me, su me, dra me, ti me, ru me, recha me, chu me do, me je ka me ba, yi je ka me, yi je nambara shebe, ka je ma do ya me do, Mare ba me, mare ba se ba me, kashi se pe ba do yang me, te shen do dunga wada gunjo wa, oba da la me yi shi me, toba me, ma do pa yang me do ye bu, da wa na ja ju sen ba na, toba me pe chir, shira je pa ru do chen ba, ten je ne de sen la tri ba me je, tra ba me de, chi je lo le shin do de, Nyangele debe thar chindu bezondo namba shube sanje tamje sheraje barudo chimba la tene lana meba yanda ba zobe chanju ombar zoba sanje so tena wana sheraje barudo chimbe nga sheba chimbe nga lana mebe nga minyamba da nyambe nga dungme tamje radu shibore chebe Mizubena demba shebo chade sheraje parudu chimbe ma meba tiyata gade para gade kudi yeso Shari bu janju samba samba jembu teta sheraje parudu Samola la para jawo tene chumbe de dengi tene shinde janju samba samba Baba jire ze wanju la lezo shechawa chine lezo reji ku tete shino tete shin chedara jeje tenwa shido shera je paru do sambola chebara chade teje sheba namya jesu yira shonde deke deke je ka tsene tsedan tenba shere dade buddha chanju samba samba Baba jire ze wanchu dan tamje dan tembe kor teta dan tata mida ama tesa jebe jede yirande chomde deje sumba ngomba de do.
Thus I have heard, once a blessed one was dwelling in Rajagriha on Vulture Peak, together with the great assembly of monks and bodhisattvas, At that time, the Blessed One was totally absorbed in the concentration that examines all phenomena, called profound illumination. And at the same time, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was engaged in the profound practice of the wisdom found beyond, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, the Venerable Shantideva spoke to the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, how should those of good family learn who wish to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, replied to the Venerable Shariputra, saying, O Shariputra, whatever son of God of good family wishes to follow the profound practice of the wisdom gone beyond, should look at it like this, analyzing the five aggregates by nature empty. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, karmic formations, and consciousness are all empty. Therefore, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. They are unborn and unceasing. They are neither impure nor free from impurity. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no karmic formations, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There are no spheres of the eyes up to no spheres of the mind. There are none of these all the way up to the sphere of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, nor is there destruction of ignorance. There are none of these all the way up to there is no old age and death, nor is there destruction of old age and death. Thus there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering, and no path. There is no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, all bodhisattvas hold to the wisdom gone beyond. And because there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond falsity, they reach beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times, by relying on the wisdom gone beyond, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, most perfect and complete enlightenment. For the mantra of the wisdom gone beyond, the mantra of great insight, the unequaled and unsurpassed mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as the truth, for there is no deception. The mantra of the wisdom gone beyond is proclaimed. Tayata gate gate paragate parasamti bodhisattva. O Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva, mahasattva, should learn the profound wisdom gone beyond. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and praised the noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, very good, O son of good family. It is exactly like that. The profound wisdom gone beyond should be practiced exactly as you have said, and then the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the noble Avalokiteshvara, the whole gathering and the world with its gods, men, and the gods and spirits, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the Blessed One. So ends the noble discourse on the essence of the wisdom gone beyond.
아니 다 주주고 지라서 보고 주주고 지라들에서 다 주주 스타츠 다 말아서 간다대 아니 지 최소한테 고직지 체는 이제 마게 돼 주시 실라 마시라 직시 지난도 돼 주주 땅 어디 전다 된다 도도로 땅도 돼 좀네 된다 도도 세 가서다 준주 주벌을 주바 생각다 냠내데 제약 아니 달로 좀 제약이 그거 제벌진데 해서 뭐지
Oh yeah. And then as it was Thursday, we resume our Thursday evening class in the Way of the Bodhisattva. This is the Way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharya avatar, the practices, the trainings of the Bodhisattva. And as we do, the Dharma Center Gyuta arranges for the teaching. You dedicate yourselves and your time, and we meet together And meeting together to engage in the training in the way of the Bodhisattva is an exceptionally potent moment together.
Oh, yeah, that the day you do that, and that Jobala Juba says, and you can that they love me, then on the shade and that got a mute, and on the mute Karesna, and on Zanzobe, and that goes with Juba. But to do Nimachik Nisha Tuchik to do tea, any ragged to do tea now, ragged Lunga with Jobati, and a Joba Sambola Laptobadella, and a Jobala Jubas. That was the mute resonance.
Now, when we enter the way of the Bodhisattva, the objective and the purpose of the way of the Bodhisattva is, should we ask of it, what is it? It is the actions of body, speech, and mind that we undertake continuously day and night, the activities of body, speech, and mind, that they conform with virtue, that they be constructive, that they be benevolent.
Oh, yeah, they do the Madame. 미치기 냠내스 단냠내스 단냠내는 자와 아니 장주 생미 냠내 치다 다 장주 생미 냠내 치세디 아니 고 버게 수수기 룽아 예송기 쩨바데 루지고는 쩨바치고야 아지고네 아니 쩨바다 이지고네 성로 당고야 이게 님은 고숨기 다 레바 차제레숨 가르치기 요바나야 아니 강은 제바 탐제 아니 수수가 대화 토백이 줄을 줘 대한 좁아대 아니 장주 세번남지 좁아도 튜바 어디들지를 종소나 아니 다 좁아라 라바생에 되기 된다 상이 요래서
So then in the lifetime of practice of ours, the very root and foundation is the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, and trainings in the mind of enlightenment. And when we enter the way of the Bodhisattva, each of us enter via our actions of body, speech, and mind. Actions of body, speech, and mind, all of our labors through body, speech, and mind. And the objective is that these labors of body, speech, and mind all become cause for our achievement of contentment, and that they all harmonize with the very trainings of the Bodhisattvas.
다 이제 인도 가서 다 쩨발 당하면서 미지 생기디 아니 즉 다시 자단으로 즉 초진이다는 미지 생들은 것도 좋아했어 한 초진이 때는 오늘 쩨바냐네 제약이 즉 고지 좀 전에 지금 미지 삼로 단계 있나 미지 하장 튼두 마다와 안 되게 강해 요 뉴스 차대요 세단 티인도 아주 미지디 거기 즉 최고 냠내 제야다 아니 즉 거기 간데 즉 자월랍 뭐 제야를 치도 삼로 땅에 있나 아니 미지디 마다와 미지 튼두 조지 잘해서
Now, Charya, the activities, the practices take place during our life, and ordinarily when we take stock of a lifetime, it can even look amply long, sufficiently long. It can look as though it's actually a long time. But when we begin undertaking spiritual practice, it begins to seem incomplete and short, as though the span is not sufficient, as we are engaged in the practice of the Dharma now. And the practice of the Dharma and the trainings confer great blessings, but the time that we may receive them, one lifetime, may seem insufficient.
Oh, interesting. Indeed, that around the Pageta, Chick Chanju Sembek, Jobal, Labia, Lab said to that, and then Maranzo of Chick Tuzu dig some of the Kohejan Tangaina, and then Tuzu dig on that Satan's lab where the Dignizu Chavaina, and then also Tuzu Shara Tangaya, Maras Sedan Mazuta to you, Yamnechi to Peshe to some Pena, Peshe to and Suzuki Labana, Tabiagi, Gutilla, and it's that trade, that trota, and a shingota, the little swim on which you have soon the remat up, and the aunt to reming it in the Chechuna, and another day to do for a comar was. But these have the Tabi Yiva Kariuva, Lavana, Swim Kariuva, the Savama Shingatil Matabshana, and a Komaki to Yamdo Kengro, or dinner scenes in Aranzo with Mizid Diginalata, chewing Yamlen Chedi, and 추억이 냠내 제대다 간다를 빼 방진 미리 두주 방법이 거는 지대고 있나 아주 미지기 당근 말 제가 추억 가리빼 랑이 퇴바다 벨람사 냠내 지기 라는 따르는 아니 제투가 최고로 했을 때 마도나 아니 아주 세대기 마당와 제는 최제야 파 년가 최고 차대요 그래서
Isn't any pay the character and seven mobu yoviche and tepchikla and
답이나
ra pedro
냠도 답잖아 야기도 가면 되게 물어
no you got in it and
레진 답되나 맞아
no
뒤지고 걸어보고 말와
no
배디나 계속
no the charya and the dharma, the training in the dharma, we call it the training. It's an undertaking, and if we look at the time available for that undertaking and divide it apart and use it, and when we look at it, take stock of it this way, we'll find that it's insufficient for our objectives in our training. It's as though, imagine that there are two approaches you might take. Imagine first you have a handful of seeds, and they're seeds for various grains and flowers. And if you were to leisurely one by one plant them, planting them one by one over a span of time, they would ripen one by one and slowly. And it might be that you don't find the time for all of the seeds in your hand to be planted and then ripened. And you might find it better to, in one go, plant all the seeds that you have already in your hand so that they all ripen together. And so in this way, our practice is like that, so that we aren't caught with too little time. Our practices, they're practices of listening to the Dharma and implementing what we hear and the rest to bring them to bear all at once so that they ripen together is the other approach.
거의 다 되게 디자인도 가서 다 미세 팀도 지나가 냐면 락침부 치고고 여러 왔어요. 냐 치고도 아니 먼저 다 당분에 자주고 생각 팔랍토가 있나? 아니 자주고 생각 라베 되다 냐면게 내다 내 체쇼 개 체쇼 랍 체쇼 된데 이도 아니 자주고 생각 랑게 배워버진 야고 랍토가 주나? 아니 윤대 신다 담지 랍바다 총바 차그래 해서
Now in the short lifespan that may nevertheless be the occasion for tremendous blessings and opportunity, if that source of opportunity and blessing, particularly the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, if we endeavor to undertake training in that, it is the training that is critical. It is the training that is most significant. It is the training that is most blessed. And if we are able to undertake it, then we will find that that is the same as the coming to pass of all good qualities.
예. 근데 이들마다 근데 그 랍체 보고 냐면 자주 쌤생들 랍발라 라나 랍 투야기 차제 아니 밖에 간다 손남 거 쏘다 이식이 쏘 야친구 마사나 아니 자주 쌤들 랍야가 랑기 뉴베 당기 말했어 제가 비뉴바 당야기 치돌라 아니 장고 손남 거쏘 야친구 싸야기 치돌라 자주 쌤 줄을 쳐버려 손남 야친구고 손남 야친구 쏘발라 아니 뭐도 야마 빈바스게 되니 자 소소야기 차진 여도 매도 매로한테 차대요 아니 디난다 자라 빈바라베 계시고요 그래서
Then training in the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. For this training to have any efficacy at all, for there to be a capability or aptitude for it, two collections are required, the collection of wisdom and the collection of merit. If these are insufficient, if these are not present, then one will not succeed as they endeavor to train in the mind of enlightenment. So in order to come to possess the accumulation of merit, the accumulation of autonomy for the development of the mind of enlightenment, we engage in preparatory practices to that end. Namely, and especially the 7 branch offering. If there's any preparation that is really for the accumulation of merit, that brings about an accumulation of merit, it's this 7 branch practice.
Oh, yes, that in the you that Tambo de la Chanju Sem, the parent the Rangi Shangores, Sanju Sem, the parent the Mashana, and the Chanju Sem the Lomdugis, and Troa the King Maros, and teach the Tambo parent the share. And it teaches Yala Dubashi doors, the Yala Dubashi di, and it's so Tang around the Suzu Chasha and Mazula Suzu Pejutan around the Ombu you to share the Ombonga, Pejuching the Ombonga. 온봉하게 배제해야 될 유응아 소다 제가 리장하도 어다 대소 아니 거기 대소라 아니 난교 온보다 치 온보다 대소 강가 아니 최배 유일라 chen 아니 군조로 쳐봐야 표 아니 군조 예버 치고 요래서노지.
Then the process begins with a growing awareness of the benefits of bodhicitta itself. Without any familiarity with the benefits of the mind of enlightenment, there will be no enthusiasm for training in the mind of enlightenment. When the enthusiasm develops through an awareness of the benefits, then we begin to practice the 7 branches, and each person practices the 7-branch offering first by their awareness of their own 5 sense faculties and the objects of the 5 sense faculties, forms and sounds and tastes and odors and textures and the rest. And as one senses all of these then become the very material for offerings to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. They are internal and external offerings of the faculties and the sense objects, and they make up the offering component of the 7 branches.
Oh, yeah, that's not super Pia that Suzuki, Nubaki Tao, Susula Pucha, Zed, you know, and the Tambo Susu, Putuya, Zed, Mibache. And the Mibache about the big judging with things in the drink about tuning bed, that chi chuba, Nangi chuba, Sama chuba, Tekonani chubas, and chuba Zukanga, Kandaya Puni, and Kunjola, chuba tiki Puni. And Susula Pake, the Ochimbu, Kunjo, Nieba, Yen, and the Jingi, Ishi Chung. And Kunjo Chinji Labra in the Rama and the Dodge Mujag, Ishi, Chinji Labra in the Miwacheni, and the Chuba Puna and the Chuba Jachambo response.
When one has an aptitude for making offerings, one may take any offering that they have at hand, any material that they have at hand, and then through the power of mantra and their aptitude for visualization, they may multiply it, and they may become outer offerings, inner offerings, secret offerings, offerings of suchness. All of these offerings then are offered up to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas who acknowledge and receive them. Receiving them, this causes in them an experience of great bliss, which they then return and confer upon the individual making the offering. And the individual who has made the offering experiences the wisdom of great bliss. It is a blessing received from the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas through the offering. And when the offering is undertaken this way, it becomes fast.
Oh, yeah, then Chuba Pisa, the Chuba Pisa Namsa, that is a other Lunga using the Kubek chart service. And then chart, that music on the chart, magic on the easy on the chart, what the song. Tinane, the so easy on the chart, what the catch shoulder, and the music on the chart, what the Yuna. And Lunga on the charts over the Rashing Yongo or Sedan, charts a paint over the shoot out of awesome.
And with the offerings followed the accumulation of merit. And following this, we begin to pay homage through body, speech, and mind. That homage is paid through body, speech, and mind, but it is primarily and especially an homage, a prostration that is mental. Wherever the mental homage begins, it will be followed by the homage of body and speech too. And this material we have already presented.
Oh, yeah, the Choba the charts I watch it. That in a Gamru Cheva, the Gamru Cheva, Tabu Javu Moson, and a Javu Moson, and that Rangi Pagay, Kunjola Luke, each in by Jabs. The Ranga Dick, that under Jab to have Nuba Yuba Shimba, and Jabs to draw at Sumba the rest.
The offering, the prostration are just these. And then this is followed by refuge, refuge requires recognizing the object of refuge, the object to whom one goes for refuge, those to whom one entrusts oneself with conviction, those who have the ability, the power to protect one.
Oh, yeah, that sonam dege saane ani da kariche orsna da aramzola kari orsna aramzola thoma mebane tada badola ani chik page da jebu dungi nyong goya gi le mangu yorwa le pe thaga jamo the mangu ro da le to thabar cheba ani chijung ani rangda nyamzola toba jule kya gi chidola ani thabshe chik ani shaba che chira kechembu yoros da shaba che gi leudi 샤베 류디스 우여서 다 샤베 류디스 온디가 다 샤바 제야들 아니 다 그래서 건도 쉐바다는 jambu sem제 니 체는 다 샤바 제야다 아니 님부 치주체는 답변은 제바도 개왜 네바이는 치주체는 나와 제야다 아니 라싱이 가나 모델에 디바이나 아니 님부 또시 거네 샤바 어디 송구여서
After the accumulation of merit, what follows? What follows takes place because from beginningless time, we have accumulated negativities, negative actions that are bound to result in suffering. In order to purify these, and in order to ease the way of realization in our own minds, we confess to these negativities in order to purify these negativities so that they may ripen and pass. And so the chapter in the Way of the Bodhisattva on confession. In confession, one identifies the refuge and goes for refuge, and one develops the mind of enlightenment. And then one also rectifies all violations to one's vows, rectifies any violations for which one is responsible. These may be violations to commitments that are regulations from the Buddha. They may also be violations of that are actions that are intrinsically negative. In the case that they are intrinsically negative, they are addressed through the application of the four antidote powers.
Oh yeah, that never did dinaneta, never large over top to that. Any danger top the Kazamazu Chimbaresa, number soon, that's but number soon in the top center. Number soon in the top teller, any subject, which Kazan, the demand, shake your response.
Number soon in the top.
Oh, Subat.
That's a thing it up, you book on the job at Sarva.
Consequence, the guest, she just said, no.
And you never let large over it.
Never lot of the Tama.
Over the past weeks, we have attended to the antidote power that is the force of the support, as well as the antidote power that is the force of overcoming misdeeds through the application of the antidotes. Now we turn our attention to the antidote power that is the force of repentance or remorse.
Oh yeah, that Kazan should do Chevaina, that ye number swing with top de la Yanica, Carson number swing in that Judah number one. Any Diva Saba the Moson, and a Moson, and Shabasitan is shaggy or response.
The force of repentance involves the recognition of the time of the non-virtue, cause of the non-virtue, the aspect or appearance that the non-virtue took, and then follows a confession to these.
Oh yeah, that Tujukoning on the Garza, Tujukoning on the Tuma Meba. Jawa Mazuki Jawa Toma Dinere, say that on the Sugan Mosun to a Yomar said that Jawa Toma Mebane and Tandala Trin Jawa Di Padula. That Sarah Mamurilla, and that Ranzugi, and machine be on get that, the Rangi Cheba, the Shana Cheba, the Batiki chick, Ranga Samutan, and Yobache, chick shiggy or res. That the dig lay top chimbu yoba digi, and that Rangi Miship, Mumba Wangi, and Shangi Kiba Cheba Layan, Jesu Yiran, Tiba. Oh, yeah, that Tiba to give more soon, and that Shabachitan shiggy or res was.
The time in which these negativities take place is time without beginning. None can definitively say time began here. Instead, time has no beginning. And until this very moment, up until this very moment, negativities have been occurring. And they have been occurring under the sway, the preponderant influence of mystification and bewilderment, which causes us to directly engage in negativities and indirectly engage in negativities, recognizing that we have done so and do so, and feeling remorse is part of confession. And so too, bewilderment has been so great for us that we also relish and rejoice when others engage in negativities. So recognizing this fault of ours too, we feel a sense of remorse.
Oh, yeah, you want to soon, and you Timo on gay, and lady number of the Tegonaji, Temashiba, share of the Namji, share of Meba, or the dig Jang on gay, and it's around the Chaba, the Shanla Dawagi. The dig it done, you move Namdan share did it. That number gone, it was here the Rangamos of Cheba, Rangamachina and Shanla Judy, Shanla Chetu Juba. But Shanla Chetu Juba student, but that Suzuki. 지금 밖에 모아시험을 제도 주고 이거를 제보이나 수수 콜 룸보다 요거저 제도 주고래 아니 대나시 지금 파마이나 보고를 제도 주고도 뭐 되게다 먼저 수수 맞이는 시에는 제도 주고 왔어야 되고 저러 어디지 아니 되네 다 시행지 수수기 때내 무슨 제면나야 시행지 제벌을 제수 이랑 전 오다 거기 내가 제수 거기 따다 소송아 거기 배서就是따다 거 제송什么수수고 가고 제수 이랑 전나 아니 내기 뭐 전부 이거 계산이 시작이 봤어 이제 내기 남랑 거네 이나야 랑 무슨 제바 제도 주고 아니 신기 제벌 제수 이랑 왔을 때 남랑이라 숨져요 해서
The cause of these negativities are the mental afflictions, particularly the three poisons: ignorance, aversion, and desirous attachment. And under the powerful sway, particularly of bewilderment and naivety, we miss the intrinsic nature of things. Failing to recognize the intrinsic nature, we engage in negativities. Failing to recognize intrinsic nature as it is, we become prejudiced. We have attachments and aversions, strong attachments and aversions. So this is the cause of negativities. The aspect or the appearance, their manifestation is seen through personal direct action, as well as indirect action in which others are employed in order to engage in a negativity. For instance, when an officer or a king is able to direct inferiors to do something, or friends get friends to do something on their behalf, or parents use their children for some end. There are all sorts of versions and ways that we engage in negativities. Furthermore, actions for which we are not personally responsible, actions of others that are negative, but that we relish, as I've said, are especially grave in terms of their consequences, as I said. So the manifestation of the action of the non-virtue may be any of these three: direct responsibility, indirect responsibility, and then relishing the action of another.
뭐야, 다 되게 디버진 바디, 랑이 디버진 바, 셴바지, 뭐 셴바지, 아니 뭐네. 다시 가르쳐 오스나, 다 디버이나, 다 거기 제부 미기어 챙기유도, 나는 걸어다 교바체네. 다 샤바체스, 좀마다 디버인 바, 뭐 셴네, 뭐래지. 아니 디버디 다바체로 왔어요. 다바체라, 다 다른 말하면서 다바체 차진 차상 창대 요랬어. 아니 가르스는 당부디, 차진 당부디 말하면서 딕발인 바, 뭐 셴바. 디베 제부 동해인 바, 뭐 셴바. 아니 개와치는 대화 용구가 셴바. 된대기서 라도 디바다 개와 예와 치투야지. 아무도 쳐라도 남지기 셰랍성이 된 간들로 요레스, 덴데레스. 드린 간들로 덴베 투즈데레스. 직제. 다 니바들라 아니 되게 셰랍디기 아니 라비야기. 아니 단지 지딩 최대 지딩도 내대봐. 지딩도 내면은 비어마로 내내 뒤임바. 근데 이번 맞아 아니 최 때문에 라마 교회 신이다 그 계속 군조다 최다. 아니 또 긴뒤 차상 아니 지딩도 내대be 급 된대지를 쓰다 된대 인도 달래가서 아니 디바디 샤기나 샤투야기 차진 차상 창에 뒤수 직차대에서 아니 드링어도 다 디바디 샤기 이센다 드리 샤고 유제디 디바디 모션바레 디바디 바 모션바레 디바디 타는 아니 동해 용고 메바대야 가도 생기요래 제가 된대기 고급들라 아니 랑이다 동해 용 먹어야 탑디 제거해야 돼 수수를 내게 개치셔도 차대요 그래서
when we acknowledge non-virtues as non-virtues, accept responsibility for non-virtues, we may then confess to these non-virtues. For we have identified and acknowledged non-virtue, called a spade, seen non-virtue as non-virtuous. And then remorse is natural, and the confession process natural too, where we are interested in purifying and eliminating those negativities. We have presently all the conditions necessary to effectively eliminate those negativities. The conditions for this are, namely, the recognition of non-virtue as non-virtue. Also, the recognition that from non-virtue, by definition, one experiences a result that is dissatisfactory and suffering. Furthermore, there is too, for us, a recognition that from virtue comes satisfaction. We have the native intelligence presently to discriminate between virtue and non-virtue. So all of these are present for us at this time. They're present for us at this time as our biological endowment of our natural intelligence, but furthermore, this opportunity is present to us because the Buddha Dharma is extant now, present now. There are times when the Buddha Dharma is absent in a place, but it is present now. Furthermore, spiritual mentors from whom we may learn the Dharma are present as well. The three rare gems, the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, are present in this way. And so if we choose to, our confession may be done with great effectiveness. And so then we can commit ourselves to engaging in confession for the reason that we know non-virtue to be non-virtue and wish to purify it so that we avoid the consequences of non-virtue, which are suffering.
Oh yeah, that's Shaban condition is Sambatabe. Ubunam Shah, that's it by dog, Sitama de Yorda. There's not that Sambatabe, Ubunam Shah, that's Sambataba said it, that Kadu Jarayina, the way we Sheba in that Lamsa, that the good was Shah, Cheva Silva. The Inet Ananzo Sambataba said, and in Karila Pogresna. 다른 장주 있으면 양랭이 심바지는 고르레스 가즈나 다 단단하죠 준준이만 시험도 다른도 이지기 삼배 군을 라면 아니 레 가르치에나 되게 디바차돼요 다 신진진기 왕기 아니 라기다 고숨비 차와 가르치와 이나야 디 아니 다 개와 어디지 어쩌다 인디 대인디 아니 다 나라도 가르쳐서나 랑 가리는 삼로치는 마다 라지지 삼로도 맞게버체 아니 신진지기다 삼로 대왕이 아니 신 대화로 거보다 신된 동행을 대화다 때마 동행의 저와 체하게 삼바디 꾸는 람도 거네 아니 다 냠스 가르려 보이나 다지 아니 다른 다다 때 디고샤 줄을 두고 열어서
In the verses of confession, we speak of making our confession from the depth of our heart. Part of the interpretation of the line from the depths of one's heart, one confesses or make one's confession, make or confession from the depths of your heart. One interpretation is that this is with the complete acknowledgement, recognition of non-virtue as non-virtue, from which follows the urge to confess. But furthermore, this line means that the confession should be a practice conjoined with the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta itself. That is, absent should be pathological self-love and self-concern, which inevitably causes suffering as it is non-virtuous. In its place, there must be regard for others, concern for others, the mind that cherishes others, where self-interest is made a non-priority and the interests of others are the priority, and one seeks to endow others with contentment and separate them from suffering. Any practice formed through this attitude becomes the very cause too for purification, as it were, a practice of confession itself.
다시 하서 유거하셨나 아니 공부남라 샤서 다 투지 침봉아 근데 그 심제 탐지 동에다 채와 대화다 대뭐 되얘기 아니 되게 유된다 댐베 아니 산제 군조 아니 유된고 주 군조 아 유된 대달로 로버체베 기두 군조 숨보텔라 아니 대 듄돌라 아니 샤기 어디서 뭐라서.
And the verses of confession follow from the depths of one's heart. Confess before the protectors, the guardians, the protectors and the guardians, the protectors, the guardians. They are those great spirits who wish to endow sentient beings without exception with contentment and separate them from their suffering. These are the Buddha, the teacher of the Dharma, and the Dharma itself, which is all good qualities in and of themselves, and those that support the development of those good qualities, the Sangha. Before the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, from the depths of one's heart, one engages in the confession.
다들 샤도에 샤야 돼야는 소랑이 셈 빼는 아주 디바 샤단 될라다 빼는 아주 되게 소다르게 dom바도 조이시 dom바도 제외 예바 샤도 잠바 아니 내기 또 예바 되지 고요송 예바 되지 유 예바 되지 배 땅에 배기면 상부진 시기 아니 다바 제로시스 캠부 군도 쇼고로 와 어디 나시 다 단다 디바 샤도야 아니 수수그 셈을 디바 제바데 쳔바데 아니 군조 군도 땅에 배들이 넣으셔 배딩마송 다 친주대 지금 매스 만지 제바라 교선 친지 제바라 아니 dom셈스 어디 상황처나 아니 이부터 보겠다 이 예벌 로또 답 상기 요래 소식 넘버 순지도 없습니다.
넘버 순지도 이번에 이거
넘버 순지도 들어.
And what undertakes confession is the very mind that acknowledges its own violation to a commitment it has made, that maybe the violation to the pratimoksha vows. A violation to pratimoksha vows occurs, and one observes and acknowledges the lapse and says, I will not hide the lapse. Instead, I will purify myself, seeing that I have lapsed in this way. And before, at the foot of the abbot, one does this. This involves recalling one's violation, admitting to it, developing a sense of remorse before the Buddhas, and then committing to restraining oneself from ever making the same violation again.
Oh yeah, that's the person you chebarchena, you shaya you and chebarchen. La, and it debotop the chamber, debotop the Suzuki, debotop chimbu chebadi, and Shaba chebas, Shaba chebe, that Shaba chibu yorested, that's shy, you did, chebarche, they got the shire, the rangi diba. Tan, that you want to see Javana Shija, and debotop the deba, the Shaba. Oh, that did shire sheba again, change with 60. And it that the other leg, Dagi, Kunjo Sundani is. 안기 가져봐. 다기 군주 순다니 파마 라마 셴다라스. 니무고니 룽아당 이지. 왜? 이지 능지 강라바. 이지 능지 강라바. 어디 무슨 소리인가?
들어.
다기 군주 순다. 다기 군주 순다니 돼. 파마 라마 셴다라 순자버데 어디 실라스 이모고니 룽아다 이진내지 강라바 소득식이 소스노.
One confesses one's violations in front of an exceptional support. The exceptional support is described here in verse 30. One makes their confession before an exceptional support, which works to eliminate the negativity for which one is responsible, a negativity that has great potency, great power, but by the force of the exceptional support may be eliminated. And so verse 30 reads, whatever I have done against the triple gem, against my parents, teachers, and the rest, through force of my defilements in my body, speech, and mind.
연대기신 개발전에서 연대 관한도다 거기다 랑기줄라 또고줄라 계약이다 탑 유이 개발전에 군조 숨물에 따라랑 팬도베 신기차네 파마다 아니 랑다 파마디 랑 팬도베 신승이라고 다데네 라마디 랑 가딩기 신스 가딩 어다 아주 가딩 치쇼데 산제 차 군주 숨레자 라마의 가딩 치어지그레스 가딩 신디 아니 라마시 오예다 어디줄 아니 그 신개발전에서 사버려서
Those which we call the exceptional fields, the exceptional supports, are principally the three rarities, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. These three gems are the extraordinary field of qualities. For relying upon them in one's own mind, realization arises. And so they are the exceptional support. The exceptional field of benefit is one's parents, for they benefit us. And so they are known as the exceptional field of benefit. The guru, the spiritual mentor, is called the exceptional field of kindness, for it is observed that their kindness even surpasses, the kindness of the spiritual mentor surpasses even that of the Buddha.
Oh yeah, that indeed Lama de la Lama de la Chiktoba. She Japan, that Lama de la Tanda, so that the Dobadanya, so that the Dobama de la Cambo said, Chikse, and the Yamdola, Loven Nassen, Loven Atsia, that Tangata Jam watch. 로병아스 켈로가스다 캠부치니 로병시 캠부가세 다 디나네 마치니다 장주선백의 도바치니는 도바나니 도바만 보조 진행의 라마저로 딜렌 라마스라고 그래 아니 난 도바시에는 로병 도지 상식도 도바나니 라마데 라마지그래 어쨌든 라마데라야 아니 디데게스 방고요레 소노스
The gurus are spiritual mentors who confer vows upon us, and the explanation then of who is the spiritual mentor follows from who gives these vows, and the pratimoksha vows are given by an abbot. Count the abbot in with the other preceptors who confer vows in the vows of individual liberation, pratimoksha, and they are 5, but we won't go counting them all right now. The Bodhisattva vows, those who confer those, and the reinforcement vows too, are the spiritual mentors as well. And then in the Vajrayana, those who confer Vajrayana vows are the Vajra preceptors, Vajradhara.
Oh, yeah, the old that in the that Karasana and it that Page you chever chen de la che that delaya and that you and you mumba, you mo that the Jasha Timusum you go ne, you musum che, and in Joa, and in Junior Musum de Wangi, and in Joa Lungaji gone, and in Beneluigi, that Luigi gone, and in Chick Lama the Sanja and Zula Degbata. 당아도 가진 gemru lamrin 니에는 라메기 바게 균시를 라마가 대보다 송자바다 아니 투투바다 마데님에 제바세도 또 룽아 예수 제바데 여러와 어디저다 아니 군조를 차샤베는 군조라야 아니 마데바 제바다 아니 군조기 가다다 어딘데다 군조를 때문에 예바 유모 두숨 요거는 제베 니버 제바 강인바디 아니 신 유체버잖아 아니 마테바체베 디바인도 디바디 톱체 요레세단 디리 디바디 인지미디 샤바 디바도 디바이 뭐셔는 샤바체 오레서.
So these are exceptional objects, extraordinary personages, and described here is the event of, in the event of mental afflictions, desirous attachment, aversion, ignorance, these as causing the action of injury caused by body or speech done to these exceptional objects, the Buddha, etc. You'll remember from the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment that disrespect and harm done to the spiritual mentor includes physical abuse, disobeying their instructions, disturbing their mind, calling out faults of theirs. Any of these varieties of lack of faith and the presence of mental afflictions that cause one to harm these extraordinary personages, these extraordinary persons, these are extraordinarily grave misdeeds by the force of the object against whom one does this harm. And so these are very grave, and their purification is very urgent.
유모 두숨기 온게 제 유디 아니 좋아 아니 룽아 예수미 권에 간다다 랑기 군조라 때네 디버사 갈사 샤바이나야 디버디기디게 제부 아니 제마 인지비지 샤바 세고를 샤바 마제나 아니 제부 동에 아니 전부 녀와 댕기이다 중이 두둘러 데데기 동에 용고 요바기 아니 용고 요베 레사기 요바 인디 아니 디게 답은 마제나 아니 랑이 제마 마음을 두고 동에 용와 이디
아니 딜레제네 다 동에 딕다 동에 이바 대다가 때는 디바 이바 워션 바체 디바 있는 디베 제부 동에 연구 받아 워션 바체 되네도 아니 드링다 때는 제바도 너르샤 지금도 대친중 아니 먼저 제바디 아니 베다 너르샤 앞에 두라고 거바나 두 콘도 소바 나시 전에 베티마 송산의 교바체 다 친중 데미제서 샤고 디체네 아니 샤바체 오래서
Causes for the negativities against these exceptional objects are the mental afflictions of desirous attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Desirous attachment, aversion, and ignorance cause the application, that is, the action itself, which takes place through body, speech, or mind, and harms these extraordinary persons. Harm done to these extraordinary persons is the very great negativity that, when it is the greatest form of negativity, results in suffering in the hell realms. When it is a middling form of this grave negativity, results in the suffering of the Preta realm. And when it's a lesser form of this grave negativity, results in the suffering of the animal realm. These experiences, these consequences of these actions are necessarily follow. They necessarily follow unless they are addressed through confession and purification. The recognition that one's future portends this great suffering as a result of these negative deeds, this realization, the realization of the coming suffering, recognized, informs one's decision to own one's responsibility. It's as though one recognizes one has swallowed poison and wouldn't do it again and would address that immediately.
Oh yeah, that dine, that nibadela, medube tribu. That around the Suzuki medube tribu di. Medube carry medube tribu, that dungai by the motion by Cesar, dungela someday, and it give a shabas, he called that shag subject did it. Medube tribu, some give a shabas, says it. That they get saw the carasana, never to make you and chape. Legenda Dibakam. Shindu Mese Kibate, Tamji Jemba Namla Shas, or that 60 or subject to that thing your response.
And what follows in verse 31 is the making explicit of the reflection on unwanted consequences, that this then causes one to feel a sense of remorse. Reflecting on the unwanted consequences that follow from negativities, one confesses with remorse. And so verse 31 reads, all the evil I, a sinner, have committed, all the wicked deeds that cling to me, the frightful things that I contrive, I openly declare to you, the teachers of the world. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that never to make you Chabas, that never to make you Chabas, that can't the shit jab there. You move to some deeper, the two thought, deeper the language with that, you get to when you heard that. That you get to and then you move to some on the shed, on to some the land, you get to do you want to someone attendant to our Luma, you soon give on it, that job a Kariche Shaba Yanaya, Digidi, and that. Dibu Diwa Lagre, and Joy Diwa Lagre, said that the dig never Mambo Cha the Yogi, Penyaba, that Manado Neba, Tangajan and Yamatuya, and be Chezet at the dig Sejan and Zematuya, the dig Neba pet Papun, Pumbunaji Yoba this. And the Karichik is not the Zen Dagi Diba, the dig Diba the Dendi, and Diba Dita. Ani da Kalichiki is the Shabachu to say that get the body motion but any that because it co Karisnada, they did the Batilla Tene and Jebu Dunge that Jebu message to Messebasada, other pay never Dungeina, Penatana, Suzuki and the Mizidilla in Bayanaya, 만들어야 다 지금 동해 진주 권나와 아니 지금 밖에 수불을 지금 마도 템바다 수불을 지금 카도 참마도 수바 되지 동해지나 양 맞아 메시베 동해 여러 된지지 메시베 여바 이나 아니 예외의 동해 생애도 아니 배랑이 류 멜스 출로 저거를 멜을 짜게 아니 된지게 동해 圈 쇠마도가 된지게 동해 제부 전부들이 진 동해기 되고 예반되다 아니 짐벌 제백이 아니 예바되다 예백 이제 다 예바스를 좀 받다 간다를 거기 디바되다기 아니 예배초 주마 차소 예배 교회도 제바되다 아니 뭐 다버 제배지도 아니 샤바치기 있어 망고 참아서
뭐 저런 거 얘네들이 아니 그래서 그 제부 다 그래서 아니 대포디 아니 교기 대포다
주디 봐도 제외디 봤어
아니 조르디 되게
제외디 봐도 룽아지 건 사베다
사고
시험 앞에는 차바다 나오게 네가 망고 봐 랑기 다디 밖에 랑기 초라 차바 신지 초라 당마 근데 디버 잘 쓰는 디도 어디 봐도 뭐 소망에도 뭐지 건졌다
The causes of non-virtue are the mental afflictions of desirous attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Non-virtues or negativities are causal negativities and resultant negativities. Causal negativities are just these three mental afflictions. Resultant negativities are the actual actions undertaken under the influence of the causal negativities of the mental afflictions. For instance, any of the actions of body, speech, or mind that are actions informed by attachment and aversion. So from these mental afflictions come these actions of body, speech, and mind. We are responsible for countless negative deeds. They simply are uncountable. There's no measuring them. They are, as it were, a ginormous heap of negativities. And we recognize the negativities as negativities and confess them. We confess them with the awareness that our future portends unbearable suffering for us as a result of these negativities. In the hell realms, imagine the discomfort of a headache or a small cut, an injury now for us in our lives, a shot with a needle. These are all intolerable to us, but in the hell realms, beings are fried and they're frozen. And these are the results that come to pass as a result of non-virtues, and these we purify.
Oh yeah, that and that 나랑도 다 밖에 동해기 밖에 다 동해 지역이 주차벽이 예바들도 강가로 예바 컨디션에 다 되게 강 디버스라고 그랬어. 나 디버 전부 되게 아니 제부 다 되게 수수로 얼마도야 되게 동해 전부 용도가 근데 되게 안 등에들 껴봐 쳐봐도 수익격도 그래서나 아니 다 군조 숨기 껴도 그래서 그게 즉시바디게 단다 뭐게 단다 즉시바디게 탐제 점만 남나 샤스로 탐제 점바세리 다 동에 랑기 듀베 가르지 망고 사샤바 예나야 되게 제부되다 용 먹고 껴버 진예 수익격도 그랬으나 아니 내가 제부 동에 탐제를 껴버 진예디 아니 군조 숨들에 세상 군조 숨들 된도라 아니 랑기 비버체 봐라 아니 밖에 잠부체네 아니 샤바체 진지 미주선의 dom승지 권에 아니 샤바체네 아니 랑기 때 동에 주 디바당 제부 동에 되게 강한 용모가 다바체 봐대 디지털은 잠부치기요 해서
I don't chepa.
이바다 단다 가서
Dom chepe. Dom karisa.
다 더버다 지기 말이지 탐제 전반 남아 샤스라도 직시바디 다 탐제 전반 남아 샤스야 되다 간다 간도 되게 간다 디버사시 유디버다 제부 동에 되기도 되게 다바체도 샤야 돼 아니 수르나 군조 숨고도 우리 샤바치기 있어 아니 샤바체에 가스나 아니 다 그 라운 간다게 때 제부 동에 셀 동에 아니 유미 제바 배용 쇠미 투바다 용고야기 듀디바탄 아니 제부대다 용 먹어봐 될라 쪽 얘기 아니 군주 송고도 아니 샤바치기
non-virtues caused by the mental afflictions that inevitably result in suffering, unbearable suffering. Aware of these unbearable sufferings in store for one in their future, one looks to find where protection may be found from that inevitable suffering. Who is able to protect one from that? And finds that the triple gem is able to. And so the fourth line of verse 31 reads, I openly declare to you, the teachers of the world, that is, the three gems. These are the individuals that, whatever the negativity, are able to protect from the consequences. These three gems, then before these three gems, one confesses to these negativities.
다디네 디오들 다디네 마 디바들레서 다디네 저와 가르스나 다오나 디바디 마샤바치 디바다 제신도 쉬워이나 아니 다 제부 아니 동해 된들 연구요가 될라 아니 랑이 지네 아니 될 교바다 제데 아니 다 교바 곰베 아니 캡스 도와스 다 균제디식 요레스 sabjetires 아자 아제다 디바다 제네 디바 마샤바 디바 유신도랑 치와이나 아니 예선도 규고 요바다랑 심바체 다 심바인다 다 딜라 지바딜라 짜네 아니 다 교바치네 다 점로 제바죠와 디스 이제 디시야 탄다라 다 자와 가르쳐버리나 다기 디바 마창월 문도 와 다기 디바 마제바 문도 그거 요르도 치스 요도지 제대로 될 녀타와 녀외 수지 잡도 서서 지기 된다디 땡겨래서 맞아.
The verse that follows expresses the remorse one would feel, or rather the remorse one feels recognizing that one may possibly die before they address the negativities for which they are responsible, which would force one to experience the unwanted consequences of those negativities, which is a fearsome prospect, and one feels remorse that this remains possible. And so the verse 32 describes the remorse one feels at that prospect. Verse 32, it may be that my death will come to me before my evil has been cleansed. How then can I be freed from it? I pray you, quickly grant me your protection.
야, 딱 한달 디바디 아니 거기 디바디 테마타도 마샤바신 아니 디바 마장월 아니 디바다 제데 치워 디바 샤주 마라오 온도 다 치워 주나 아니 다 녀루찌기 요바디 셴바다 녀루찌기 요바 녀루찌는 안 동에 저다 매바 야, 다 데리 인디선 바다 마시고는 디바 장고고 요바디 다 마시고는 디바 장고고 요바 간 디바 다 간데서 장고고 요바 초바다 아니 타도 땡기 요래서
The prospect of dying before negativities have been purified, the prospect of tumbling into the lower realms and experiencing unbearable suffering there as a consequence of one's unaddressed negativities, this prospect causes one to, with urgency, engage in finding refuge from that prospect. I pray you quickly grant me your protection.
아니 탑 초가다 탑스 지고 다간다 코스 디바 샤단 당도 디바 파게 샤야 탑시어와
No.
어디
No. Also, one then purifies these, one addresses these.
오야 제자다 간다 도도 아니 간다 맛이 춘제라 랑이 시타나 아니 랑라다 랑아 매버 차차를 내 손도 깨워다 되게 좋나 랑아 셜사로와 맛이 춘제라 랑아 요르다 랑아 가르치기나 랑 답시 가르치기나 지투야 랑아도 요르와 오 여봐 인도 좀봤다 된제기 지들 아니 맛이 춘제도 아니 내 손도 동에를 탈봐 거기에 동에를 탈와 제로겠니 제외 치들라 아니 그 뒤에 막고봐 가다르다 배 아람돌라 뒤주 주부지라 뉴르발라 아니 코알라 탈와 채월라 말이 갭도 쓰여스 어디 아니 점루고는 샤바치와 땡겨래서
The prospect then is losing the freedom one has now to address negativities, losing that freedom when one dies, and then experiencing the unwanted consequences. At this moment, we have the freedom to address the negativities. So before we pass away, then, with urgency, the verse describes choosing to find refuge from samsara, from cyclic existence, from the assured suffering of consequences in lower realms. So the verse says, I pray you quickly grant me your protection from these cyclic sufferings. And one finds this protection through going for refuge.
Oh, yeah. 요의 규제다 subject로 규제 가르려고 했다 디과 마찬가지로 봐도 아니 다 치워 주나 치워 수수가 가서 디과 마찬가지로 봐도 치워 중앙이나 치워 중앙이나 아니라고 디과 셔야 고급라고 말했다 디과디 강배 치워 마찬가지로 원도네 나와 치워 마중을 원도 아니 뉴도 잡을 쳐야게 아니 딱 캡을 쇼세다 캡에 캡을 치돌라 아니 자와 가르된 거스나 아니 이데 미룬 치다디스 제다 마치 미드베 나다 메나 꾸니야 로버츠라 이데 이미데스 어디다 자와디 송고레스.
So the reasoning we find in these verses is if one should die before they have purified their negativities, they will have lost the chance to address those negativities, and they will experience the unwanted consequences of those negativities. So it follows then that before one dies, there's urgency to taking sharan, going for refuge to the protectors. And so the root verse that describes this is root verse 33 on page 42. We cannot trust the wanton lord of death. The task complete or still to do, he will not wait. In health or sickness, therefore, none of us can trust our fleeting momentary lives.
This one? Oh, yeah. 다 이데 미룬 치다디스, 이데 미룬 치다디스, 말한도 체데라, 아니 가두이나 이데 치투야기다. 로 대우치니 밖에 가다 지 내가 치투야다 나라 수수도 예바연 아니 지 밖에 아니 지 간다 주제에서나 내 가르치에나 딜라 정확히는 요 말했을 거 이데 미룬 콜로 그 교는 간다 최도 지도 치마도야 간다 콜로 수랑게 돈에 태다가 즉 콜라 로 데워도 세네 간다 즉 수수그 체도 손에 지도야 균에 매버 인도 아니 이데미로 와서 치다 돼서 나 치워대라 아니 이데미로 치웠어 민당이 어래서
First line describes how we cannot trust the Lord, we cannot trust the wanton Lord of death. Meaning the present life of ours gives us no real basis for a sense of sure ease that whatever we intend is guaranteed to come to pass in this life, that there will be time and opportunity for that, whether it's a Dharma practice or some other activity. We simply don't have the assurance that we have that time in this life that we have an ability to hold to our life. In fact, there's no stability to it. There are no guarantees. And for this reason, because of this uncertainty, the Lord of Death is called wanton here. And we cannot trust the wanton Lord of Death.
Hoye, 다 간다라 가나서 직산이 미치와다 드림 미치와 간다 뒤 끼지직 추주직 끼지직 있나야 하나도 치기 말해서 아니 수강라야 이대 치 미루와 오 된데레스 아니 대 임베 준제데 가르스나 펜타 하나도 이대 펜나 이대 유바지나 그래서 그로 켜봐도 되고진 지쳐야지나 아니 하나도 다고 디바 장사셔 다 신는 지그래 하고 단다 디바 장사미도 아니 마이 신는 디그 말해서 해야기 수술을 라마지 거래 뒤에 말해서
The misguided belief that we're here living now, chances are tomorrow too, chances are good tomorrow too, we'll be well, we'll be living. This is really unreasonable. We cannot trust that. We cannot trust that. We cannot be assured really that our ease and continued life will continue. And so we might think that we can think to ourselves, this is purified now, that's done. This remains unpurified, yet there's an opportunity to come to address that. There's no assurance that there is, and so it's described here.
어이 대나시다 알아서 지대기 차와 있는다 걸 내가 살 수다 좀 거는 비그래 내가 차면도 저라 대고다 세요로 딱 어디 치워들라 저 사람민도 단단데 도레미도 세야다 사실 내가 사실 주스 된게 라와치는 치투가 요마레스 안 대나시다 알아서 빼다 코다 미지기나 코 나되나 코 오타코 나되자 갖고 시야르자 코 나미도 시야르미도 어디 된게 이denችን 지야 요마레스
It's not as it is in our ordinary workaday life where someone will say to you, you're done now, you can go, or you're not yet done, so you'll stay until you finish this. The wanton Lord of Death doesn't work in that way. He does not say, oh, you're not done? Well, I'll give you time to finish that. That's not what the wanton Lord of Death does. Our habit of thinking, this person's sick, he's soon to die. This person's healthy. It's unlikely he will die. That's a misguided feeling of there being some assurance to life where there is none.
아마야다 피나싱 하나도 랑줄 삼주주 두줄 삼다에는 콜로 셴바르시 단데 시레미도 콜로 겜바르시 시레샤세 데레기 당라 이데 요마르스다 로다 가지 차네 시네 수술라 마치와게 아니 자자의 쇼뉴뉴 아니 치야게 자자의 빼 망고 근데 이들 아니 맞을라 이데미롱 스타콜라 치와데라 이데미롱 소디진라고 레소노스.
And our misguided belief that in a time of youth, those youthful people are likely to live long, and that the aged are likely to die. This too is not assured. What is assured is the 100% guarantee of death coming, time being fleeting, the causes of death being numerous.
예, 딱히 시버데 로봇을 이미데 로봇에서 꼭 가진 게 로봇에서 게 로봇이 콜라 때문에 아니 세대양 로봇 차대요레스 배나 아니 룽길에 룽부 야마 잡데서 길을 치면 빠르이나 코 가두 심마시게 라와요 말어 티나시레스 마미 룽멀기 기게 좀 마음에 나시레스 아니 가라도 티나시 빼망고 땅아도 다다게 이제 너도 주자스 받는 카메라를 마음에다 주마세바서 모노로도 뒤에서 대다서도 어디서 가가 아니 로부아 아나도 메시지 미기 세디 아니 추 뭐하나시래 네 쇼게 시바제도 시바나시래 또 추바를 되게 빼망고 자기도 왔어 빼주를 제가도 어디서 인자 로부아 빼자기 요래서
빼주로 주직 주 conditions determine events, and conditions determine that the events of our life are very transient, very changing. The life we know and experience is not at all certain. It really is like a butter lamp in a windy cove. In that windy cove, the butter lamp is likely to gutter out at any time. There are lots of examples to illustrate how uncertain our continued life really is. From the homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, we hear these 10 examples, 10 metaphors. The metaphor of a dewdrop, life being like a dewdrop that dries so quickly, life being a mirage, life being like a bubble, a star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, etc.
어딘지를 쓰다 이데미로 온세 말아서 체대라다 수수가 간다 체대라 이데미로 이디 아니 단 맛이存在라 당기 간다 디바 가져있는 샤 겨와 가져있는 루트가 치고레스 아니 드링 대샤슈냐면서 안드네 디 간다 디마 빼망고도 되게 제르스 누가 제만은 주초가 제일 하나씩 드링 넘들한테 저들은잖아 아니 데스 야마도 카세르 드래그로 유스모스.
So our life is not, our expectations for our life are not at all trustworthy. Therefore, before our death, addressing all negativities is imperative for us. Now, there's more of this to come. We'll have to continue with it later. Now, if we use the time remaining for question and answer, my hope is that anything that isn't very clear, we might clarify.
Yeah.
So if you have a question, please ask it.
좀 된데기 딱 한다를 가서 좀 된데기 최송도 냠랭기 싸워직 메타버트 송여러스 메타버트 야고 템바이나 아니 도마치 고트게라야 그거 빼면서 로봇이 그래 봐도 중국지 냠랭지도야 그 로봇이 그래 타만 치고 냠랭 50배 냠랭 또고 줄에 깨야 되나야 메타버트 템바 뒤시리 인지미지 거레스 재단 좀 된데 당보치의 송도 메다와송 타만 양을 더발라 메다와송에서 아니 된다 그래 메다고 뒤시디야 오유나 아니 추 미디다 추 제가 꾸야 답쳐가지고 자기 어려서
When the Buddha Shakyamuni taught the Dharma, he taught the Dharma of the most essential lesson of impermanence. Whoever it is that constantly bears in mind the impermanence of phenomena, their momentariness, will be urged on and supported in all their dharmic practices, urged on and supported in the actual practices, whatever they are, supported in the development of realization. For this reason, the Buddha Shakyamuni first taught impermanence. And as his parinirvana approached, he again, at the end, taught impermanence. And it's for the reason that impermanence urges one into the Dharma.
네, 좀 되게 가르쳐는 아주 깡박 빠르지 셔도 심지기 깡박 빠르지 여러와. 지난 깡박 제샤에는 제초도 주거든 발랑기 제스. 발랑기 깡박 빠르지 저 디스 배약 대슈를 하고天南是 뒤시는 뒤시 초도 주거든 미다고 뒤시. 어제단 저들이 내송을해서.
Now the Buddha spoke of the prints, the great footprints left behind. The greatest footprint, the greatest print is the print left by the elephant. It's the mightiest print of all. Balang, konda, balang, bro. Balang, langjo mare, balang. Ale, but the bull. The bull, not the elephant, the bull. And as the print of the hoof print of the bull is mighty among ideas of the Dharma, mightiest is the idea of impermanence. So if there are any questions? Okay, one by Sujata.
I have two questions. Thank you very much, Geshe-la. My first one is about my experience of feeling remorse for the wrongs I've caused, the ones since beginningless time, but especially the smaller things, the errors of speech that I make all the time, based on my own sort of ego and self-grasping. I can get really overwhelmed with like a kind of remorse that actually feels narcissistic. And so what, and then I get stuck there in the kind of find my way out of it. And so if Geshe-la had any advice about that, getting really dejected in a way that actually feels, narcissistic, when I'm struggling with remorse, I feel, shame, I feel even about errors that I make, and not doing my best, which definitely flow from my own ego grasping behaviors. So that's my first question. And then my second question is about when we get to the four opponent powers, the part about the resolve to not do it again. Sometimes I feel like I'm just saying those words and then I literally 10 minutes later will do the same thing that I'm trying to, the smaller things, my day-to-day errors. And I feel like I'm lying when I say that last resolve to not do it again. So maybe there's just a specific antidote around that. Errors of speech that come from ego grasping. Some of us have to talk a lot for a living. Dangerous, ever present.
Oh yeah, then Tiwani your Tiwa Dampoti. Tiwa Dampoti. So Gyosim Danjewe Sorwa Dam Sorgi Korra. Gyosim Danjewe Sorwatiki Kolare. And Paul Mebane. When Susugi, Depa, and Mang Samsam, and the Chits are Yenaya Susugi Nga Gitone, and the Depa Chungsa Tenzoyang, Kadu Yenaya Bar Mechebar, and the Jung Tang Jung Drogido, and the Karichenes Lana Susugi Dr. Zimbe Logi Wangi. Chinzin, dark Chinzin Wangi, and the Tipa Chungsa de not Tanjele, Jelway, and the Tipa Chungsa, Denzo and Mutune, Kumachebar and Jung Yongido. That then Denzo and the Hone, Molinchene, the Gyosim and the Trapot and the Ke Yongido. And the Gyosim Trapot the Nanga Tsune. 이 베데 shum조게도 베데 shum조게도 아니 이 shum이야데 아니 야코마레 베메시베 적자레 염생 가르레스나 아니 친생기 왕기 다 친생기 왕기 교sem디야 아니 소설라 아니 두포땅게레 제상아 아니 교sem데라 교셈 다 신진기 로 당 자와티 이 소르와 자고 텐데 케기도 온데 당보데레 서버차사
다 간다
아데티 당보데 니버디 슈가
당부 가는 데서 아버지 지나는 데비 데데스탄 말한도 문돌아 가리요스나 랑진지게 로디 가장 공부치 보여레스 모두 뺏겨 먹보는 검사다 검사를 다 랑진지게 로디 갑대로 신진지게 로디 나도 검이요 맞다 네 만족이 냠랭이 자와 딜 신진지게 로로 공부용야 랑진지게 로도 파르는 가서 당 투야 네가 저다 냠랭이 잘 와서 뭐지 뒤서 되지 다 되네 이네 다 교바 제세디 페나타 맞у 교바 제세디 랑이 녀바디 녀바이 뭐 통도나 아까 드마송 삼네 아니 딜리 몰렌치 교바 제세 아니 진중데 지금 매 삼바지 디니 샤동다 교바당 만실 너르바 켈레바당 친질로 미지살로 디 상나 아니 또 고샤 교바디 차기로 와다 샤바 차기로 와
도망 양계로 맞지
만지 지조로 만지바 배는 먼저 독사잖아 지금 와서 섭배사서 독사선 교배지로 와 진지 그들 맞는 상매선 그 걔네지로 와 디니 상하이는 그 네바디 다기로 와 어쨌든 데데이 아니 다 란진지 바다디 교바디 슈침부 제주 아니 란진지 로도 좀 내야도 그니 할래로 제가 요 말했어 이네디 저랑 간다 다 수수 교바이 뭐 통차네 아니 다 지지 미지 삼바기 다 너무 데리게 있나 다 샤바기 된 상교를 아니 비니팔로 계획 삼부디기 걔랑 소외시기 말은 되게도
저샤기
남도게 중대게 말고 이 밖에 랑진지게 로로 밤 랑진지게 로로 중 경제 데리게서 맞다 지난 경제 보고 여러 이나야 고 수수도 내가 만디고 처럼 차요 말와 제가 디디 고 단다지 고이 발로다 디 좀 shum부도 지지 지도 봐 어디 고 말해서
What we are confronted with is pathological self-love, narcissism that is very deeply ingrained in us. And it's so deeply ingrained in us that it requires forceful opposite in practice. That opposite mentality, the opposite outlook is the outlook of cherishing others. It is unfamiliar to us, but we are practicing to increase this attitude and to put some distance between us and our narcissism, our pathological self-love that we are altogether too familiar with. So this is clearly our practice. Regarding the connection of remorse with a narcissistic feeling of collapse or feeling distraught, as there's a connection between remorse and narcissism. In this case, you describe that realistically, where there's a recognition of a fault of ours and acceptance of it, which is like realizing we've swallowed a poison and we wish never to do it again. We recognize the fault, we recognize it, and then we make a concerted effort never to repeat it. When these two are present, we have present that which really addresses our negativity, and it is in those two, where those are present, we are actively, constructively addressing that negativity, whichever the fault may be. Now, in a connection that you described between that practice of remorse and narcissism or a narcissistic experience of it, I don't see there being a necessary connection. When you see the fault and you're committed to not repeating it, you have complete there all that is required to address that violation, that fault. And anything that's oppressive or that exacerbates your narcissism is perhaps an invented extra that's sort of extraneous to it, because what you have present there is the acknowledgement of the fault and the commitment not to repeat it. So I think that there may be something additional that's unnecessary that you contribute there. Then the 아니 카로 추츠 제라 아니 나 양갸르 네베 찍배찍야 아니 중단 아니 용도 제상에 아니 님보 디 템파 디 아니 줌랑 아니 라보 아니 통기도 언데레 제상 가르 그나 ngaptan 제외 아니 덱바디 믹사와레 네체레 마랑이 아니 레게 쪼디 아니 미망라 키치셰레 제상 가드 예나야 디 카르사 ngaptan 제외 아니 네바디 쇼리고도 네발레 라르도 베톱디 텐나야 감상 아니 중기도
어다 지데레다 간다 네발라 도베 탑싱데 고 네발라 미중한테 탑시 치고 수수비 랭게와 탑시 치고 이는 고 네발라 도베 탑 중직 제사도 양조 마중한테 에스칼레 카고레서 아마 칼레 카고요 이는 중도 잡아니 아비 고 가서 찍제니 제 겁느냐 아 투야 이거 찍제 당고대 겁나 까토 이거 찍제 아니 니바들고 내가 릭직 아니 그 외워왕이야 하게 네발라를 양양 연구해 드리지 연구 니제와 그 외워왕이 그 외워왕이 그냥 아주 수수기 셈나 수수기 전신도 맞이가 있나양 신기 꾸마다는 그 외워왕이 드리지고 하는 이제 이마 있나야 랑이 딱 한달 샤바치도 개치쇼 샤바디 난제를 교선다 친지를 도서 미리 인지미지 참고해야 돼. 근데 라는 예버 시버디 상나 bü타고. 이제 그지 마상나야 샤바 마상에 예버디 요 말했어. 제가 아니 데스수기다 셈부터는 가서요 까투도 까고 어디 개침을 했어. 어디 중에 얘한테 벌써.
A commitment to future restraint, though one may actually experience that one is responsible for the same fault again and again, making that commitment to future restraint is one's responsibility. It's one's responsibility, though it is hard to ensure that by following that responsibility, one won't be at fault again in the future. It's one's responsibility, though one can't ensure it always to be effective. But what's most relevant here is your ability to restrain yourself, to prevent that future action. And when it comes again, when one is responsible for that very same thing again, it is the result of a a lapse in one's observation of that commitment. One hasn't borne in mind the commitment, and a lapse occurs. But you have in these antidote powers, especially the antidote power of remorse and this commitment to future restraint, the means for ensuring that one isn't responsible for negativities. And in addition to those two, when the other two, making all four of the antidote powers present, all four of those are present, all negativities, excluding none, may be eliminated, purified.
Yeah, about this.
Any others?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, thank you, Krishna, for teaching. I'm wondering during the day, if we were to transgress some kind of vow or something, is there a way you can recommend, like, immediately purifying it, or it's some kind of abbreviated maybe prayer or something like that? Or I've been doing my best to observe your recommendations and to do that at night or at the end of the day. But is there a way to do this purification throughout the day in case we make a mistake?
Oh yeah, the Chitan Kisi Kalop Nama de Shirjane, Susugi Tikochik Shorne, and the Lamsang, the Nibotoshi, the ten tapchi, and a Chitan, and a Carissa Gondala, and a Nima Dela, and Never Carichon. Dela Migne and so Shachi Gonda in a never short Lamsang and a deeper Shaksu than the Yoruba, Bena and a deeper the never the and a Jumata Lamsang the Carissa Shachi and Che. Tablam, Tashi, and the Yoruba, and the Mulam Torduce, and the Korea, then the double Yoruba.
The Choga Susu, Sunda Mangor, that's Ketchu Shapa Sansa, touching on the Yat Canada, another Rangi, the Butcheva, even Moshe, Aka Norson, Timason Samna, Kotibati, Teenage Cherkumara, 6. That in a Chiju Miji something could be what Chunta Tabichi, need to run Amadi Biche. That Digala Suzuki, Ketchu, don't need combat, Rasamadu, the what Taya Yubagi, Ha Junior down, the what Taya Yubagi, Vincent of the that Tombani with Vincenji, and it done to what Tagi Yubata Kangata, and the Tanda Toto, Mazu Pejan, the what Taya, the Choga Mongo Sung Yore. What choga yore, Penamado, the Tengi, the Kusum to the Sen Shabata, Tony Gombata, the Mango to see Jablema, Tinaneta, Tony Cometi, and you know, the what tired. And then show to you the Pesaka Casagana said they are resonant.
Then, Carissa, Deputy Mapayala, Shashi, then in Nurutan, you tablam career, Nurutan.
Nimbutop시 나네. 당부톱 때 거기 nimbutop시 나네. nimbukun도 집어 또 거들라 만지 제발로 교선 제발이나 디버디야 폐기 말했지. 다 진지 dom섬 제발이나 디버디 총을 다 답시 되지. 네가 초가도 그 거기 수수 근무는 내 지금들 돼야 요르데 이네 또 동이 공부디 공부 동이 공부디 아니 디버디 파 샤야 디버드 매 디버드 제부 가지 디버 다 세대 가서 디버드 사발을 되는 제부 용모가 치고와 이 디버 다를 세 그래서 제부 용모가 수치 도서 돈이 거기나 돈이 거기에 손은 되게 쏘지 아니 디버드 제부 용모가 쳐버렸어 그래서 돈이 거기 아니 디버 커도 샤야 돼 각자 약속을 했어
Yeah. There are various rituals for immediate addressing of a fault and its purification. The principle here are these two antidote powers, the antidote power of application of the antidote powers and the antidote power of remorse. Rather, antidote power of future restraint. These two ensure that one's negativities do not increase, and also in the future, one does not engage in more of the same. But these are the means for purification of negativities, the means of the antidote powers. However, it is by the nature of the absence of intrinsic nature, it is by the reason of emptiness itself that the purification and elimination of negativities is possible at all. And so there are many rituals in which this is acknowledged and this reason is principle. There are ritual liturgies in which, for the purpose of eliminating negativities, one erects representations of the Buddha and the rest. And there are many too that utilize the reason of the absence of intrinsic nature, emptiness, as the very best supreme means for addressing these negativities. So there are prayers of all sorts that one may recite, but the very best contemplation is contemplation of emptiness itself. Emptiness itself determines the very possibility for consequences that would be suffering being eliminated. The very possibility of the elimination of that consequence, that very possibility is a possibility that comes from emptiness. And it is then that meditation on emptiness is what gives us this merit, this autonomy to prevent these consequences.
Pedi kana jasa pena susu tu lo de na ane porque todo ju lo de todo tu reason sala ta chana ane tu lo de la porque ko ma lo so do e ma to so do de dan che res o pedi de jari yo de fin
So the Papa
papa lo ya to
Papa like also the 60 the 100
chi je ba
지겨불라
de ro sonam chume che de la sonam mi sonam chinju gi
라.
sonam chume che de la so to mo ni de la 태좀 전에 사기 말했어. 한 태좀 계속 태좀지 사와 있나 양 시바 후보 제가 줬어. 시바 고아도 그 십시서도 그래서.
The potential of the meditation on emptiness is so principal, so central to the meditations of the Buddha Dharma. It is described by Aryadeva in the 400 verses in this way, should a person of very little merit nevertheless have a flickering doubt as to intrinsic nature, by that flickering doubt, it will have vitiated, weakened the bind of samsara. And so it is, if you put in a piece of cloth, a stone, and the stone is in there wearing it, it will be in there wearing through that fabric. And in the same way, a doubt as to this apparent intrinsic nature begins to loosen the deterministic bind of it.
Oh yes, that must be what has said. It was a little but how sometimes you are mares. It what has said, the what dig tribute to make in young Guyana, to make in young Mogo, Sursona, and it what has. And they're quite our.
Now, and don't think of the purification of negativity as something like scrubbing out a stain from a fabric. It is the process of gaining the autonomy so that one does not experience a deterministic consequence.
Yeah, I didn't say that. Yeah.
So with that, just about our time is up.
Yeah, so Chisho on the Tanda the Junju that you would talk share the and it's all that you would talk shitty any the Penyamne Chidang. And it's Tebula Jana at a better Jana that to Yambutoshi Yamne to shake yours. Any that's it, Paganyamne, that nothing of the city was Jadus among the Susu Yamne, Jarma to a dose, down to Chonwa in that, Jelly and Jutinimata, and Dutinimata, Pema on the Shagri, so that he did some but Haga Kadula around the course, they would chamena and the water Teshima would do it. Imbutoshi that the Washada, the Juju, that Gesho, you did not Louis Mazobo, the Imbutoshi called shares. Sedanti India and Suzuka, Nimbutoshi on the Washadi, Nangal Pendo Chimbo, Le Lapo, Pendo Chimbo, the Jolly, and Gangalo, Namea of Narosis, and didn't have Desha, and then Melan to the insolence.
These verses present the antidote powers. The antidote powers then are principal practices for us. And the verses provide examples and metaphors and describes for us the way to practice application of these antidotes. It is certainly true that now we have some difficulty actually applying them, but greater familiarity and ability will grow for us. And so we find lots of examples, and the presentation goes on. The presentation of these antidote forces, these antidote powers in the confession chapter is a really extensive, lengthy presentation of these practices for the purpose of confession and purification. And it ends up being very beneficial, very helpful. So I earnestly entreat you to actually practice these. And with that, then we will recite our closing prayers.
Oh, yes. Rendo belle zone je kadar yamba kashi sabade lome mari je don rowa du nande jave ombo tayuje demo zumbe zera gundo yang jabe yang je zewe je zone Tebe remba kusan lamji jo nyene drube jena nye jo rangi jejen dobe lamji ni shudra tsebe trawe tabgenji
Rove yiji mumba seje ne jave tenpa yure sejo. Tenpa renje choje majapa chabja nyamba jube chode ne. Nije jebe yirabo jewa ye pende teje sevo chebo. Renje jave menjo chile le du chanju lamji rembe ja. Tade nanje yila pede je jave zebo rendo yunju je. Lazan drube dunye druje je gege seje mena meme. Sera kuzo jave ngamba ye namda namda dewa ma ye. Kanze tipo jolo juju sujin rula sumbo de. Ode nanje tado roje je. Kaji jato chugun jayu je.
From my two collections, vast in space that I have amassed, from working with this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading mindfully demise life. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my lives, mindfully. May I find the best of the paths of the complete teaching, and may I please all of those I practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. By the point of the path, the leg, the servant, may I have hoped for the teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or when spread I have declined, may I offer this treasure of happiness to it also dimly. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bountifully, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by following the complete red in the path of enlightenment, and the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddha. Now human and non-human beings that eliminate adversity, they make things consistent for practicing the excellent path, having departed in the day of their lives, in the purest path very prevalent. Never don't take up the glass, in accordance with the tenfold line of ritual cycle. They always be assisted by the right minds, and oceans of prosperity spread out.
Dagi jini sabe jewa di tena ro jebara jesu losa raba yi tembe nimbo rendo se Are jave goe jengande penda dewa male Ere sema tigi yadu yi shabe sidi baru tengi Jabe bo jidar kemba dang kundu sambo deya deshi. Tera kunyi jesu dalu je jema deda tamje rabu. Jesu jebe java tamje je mawa kama sudu nama. Taji jebe tawa degu ya sambo jeje rabu. Sadhu Senjo Rembo Je Maje Bana Je Yurji Kewa Nyamba Meba Ya Kone Gundu
I dedicate whatever virtues I have ever collected for the benefit of the teachings and of sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teaching of the Venerable Ozone Drop from the Flame. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful sinners and things in death. Please remain until cyclic existence is ended. Just as the brave Manjushri and Savanta Manjushri realize things as they are, also I realize that I may follow their perfect example. I dedicate all these words of virtue with the dedication praises the best by the victorious Satgyan ones of the 3 times, so that it might perform the noble Bodhisattva deeds. May the supreme joy of sufficient time that has not arisen, rise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.